Hey, Andrew, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we get to interview you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Andrew Pearson, and I am a writer currently based in Macau, China, but I'm half American, half English. And the book that I wrote is quite autobiographical. And I lived in Los Angeles for 20 plus years before I moved out here. But a writer, and I run a software consulting company here. We do a lot of stuff in AI and tech with the casinos, both in the US and in Macau and Asia. So
Amazing. I would love if you could tell us what your book is about.
Sure. So the log line, which I use more for the screenplay, is when an expat moves to Macau to run his twin brother's AI company, he falls under the influence of a charismatic casino owner who recruits him to sell crypto coin to the Chinese elite, but he soon discovers he's the dupe in a huge money laundering scheme that might be orchestrated by his treacherous twin. So it's based in, as I said, mostly in Macau, but also places like Philippines, um, China as well, mainland China, Hong Kong. And it was written in kind of between 2019, 2021, and then when we hit COVID, we were basically um, we were basically locked out from the rest of the world. The Chinese could come back and forth, but if you wanted to come to Macau, um, you had to go and stay in a hotel for 2 weeks. So there was quarantine basically. So I took that time to finish the book, and the book is based on, which I'll delve into a bit later, based on a lot of truthful events that happened here. A few that happened to me, many that I read about, and it's a very quirky place. Um, I optioned a book a few years ago, which was they called it Elmore Leonard Goes to Philly. And if you know much about Philly and Philadelphia politics, and I think in that they called it the most inept branch of the American mafia. So we have a similar vibe here. People that doing things that are completely crazy, but it all works in an odd way because we basically live off of a huge amount of gambling money that comes in from China. So it's a very quirky. We had some one mob guy who ended up wanting to make a movie about his life. So he shut down one of the bridges back in I think it was the 80s or early 90s. So, it's a very irreverent. People who have read a work by writers like Elmore Leonard probably, that's kind of what I compare it to. So very quirky, kind of like a quirky Florida mystery set in Macau, China. So that's kind of one of the way I like to pitch it.
Amazing. Love that. What inspired you to write your book?
So my parents sent me to boarding school when I was 11 years old in England, and I've been writing ever since. I remember handwriting some notes that I would send to my father, and then he would have his secretary type it up and send it back. So it'd be like my secretary that took about a month to get. So I've been writing since then, and was always a good English student. But when I was in LA, I was optioning books and adapting books into screenplays. And it was actually a great experience because it gave me the ability to understand plot, understand characters, and really understand dialogue. So when I wrote a couple of scripts in LA that were purely but that were my own, that were original spec scripts. But when I always wanted to write novels, but I kind of I guess was getting to the point where I needed to find the best story to tell. And then one of the reasons why I wanted to move to Macau was I love to travel, and you can't find any better stories than traveling. And I remember flying into Manila's Ninoy Aquino Airport the first time, as I was flying and landing, I remembered who Ninoy Aquino was. And if you know anything about Philippines history, in the 1980s, he returned to the Philippines and he was warned not to come. And there's a very famous 60 Minutes interview of him in Taiwan where he talks about, oh, I'm wearing a bulletproof vest because I'm worried about, going to get killed. So what happens is he landed on the plane, he landed on the tarmac and then someone murdered him on the tarmac. So as I'm landing in the airport, my mind is saying, this is the only airport in the world named after someone who was murdered on its tarmac. And I thought that's a wonderful way. That's a wonderful opening line of a book, because my main character is landing at Manila Airport, and he's not only remembers that, but he has just been warned that someone in that four people in four hitmen in Macau have been arrested. Um, a detective basically calls him and tells him that a hitman coming after you has been arrested. So it's kind of like he's flying into a place that is named after someone who's been murdered on the tarmac, and he also is worried about being killed once he gets there as well. So I thought, it was a great, and as a debut novelist, I thought that's a great opening line. And funnily enough, actually, there's a couple of companies on, they have accounts on YouTube, and they ask for your first opening line, and I think it's called First Line Frenzy. So I put that opening line up, and out of, I think they said they had like 1,000 plus. They actually liked that one, and it was like one of the 20 that they chose to comment on. So yeah, so that was the opening line, and then there was like the story about the four Chinese hitmen. That's actually a real story too. So China, this funky stuff that goes on in China that we never have a clue about, because it's obviously a very difficult language to learn, but there's a whole Chinese internet firewall that kind of goes both ways. We don't get the information always converted into English, and we don't understand the language. And then there was actually a story about a one hit man who was basically outsourcing his hit. So one hit man outsourced his hit to another guy, who then outsourced it to another guy, who outsourced it to another guy. And the fourth guy was so offended by the small amount of money that he was offered that he went to the police, and then they all got arrested. So, and it was just like, this is so ridiculous. But I thought that needs to be in a book, because it's kind of funny, in a black comedy kind of way. So there were, and there were other events that were, as and I laugh about it. And it's obviously about someone trying to kill someone else, but there's a black comedy aspect about it, which is just kind of so stupid. It's almost comical. So I don't mean to laugh about that, but yeah. So those were kind of, and then I did move out here because of a business situation with my brother that didn't turn out very well. So I turned out, that's kind of a little bit about the twins becoming not enemies, but stabbing each other in the back. So yeah, but a very enjoyable book to write, and I'm working on the sequel, which is called Quid Pro Crypto, and once again it follows the story of several of the characters from the first book. So, but yeah.
Love that. When you were writing your book, who were you thinking of when it comes to who your book is for?
So as I okay, so I lived in Florida for about a year, and I optioned about 7 books, and several of them were set in Florida. So there was one set in actually down in uh, Key West, and it was kind of a murder mystery by a pretty well known author named Lawrence Shames. And so there's a whole genre called Florida mystery genre, which is kind of like quirky characters. They wonder about what's going on in the water down there. Florida Man, which is a well known trope. So it's kind of anyone who would like um, Lawrence Shames, um, uh, Elmore Leonard, and anyone who would be interested. And then kind of what I was pitching it to um, publishers and agents as was kind of like Florida mystery, but set in an exotic locale, Macau and Asia. So it does follow the main character is a white male, an American male comes here, but the other characters are all pretty much locals and Asians. Or we have Macau used to be controlled by the Portuguese, so we have a lot of basically European Portuguese people. So but I think when I was writing it, and the feedback initially was a lot of people love the dialogue. So I think from working in film, I think I helped that helped craft basically craft that part of my skills. And I think anyone who likes, clever dialogue and wants to have a fun, entertaining read, that really wants the mystery, the thriller genre, I think would thoroughly enjoy the book. So it fits within that. Not quite a international spy mystery, but very much an international mystery thriller, fish out of water character. So yeah.
Love that. How long have you been writing and what made you really sit down and start?
Oh, I've been writing 45 plus years. It's been it's just something I love to do. And officially probably 25 years. Like really writing and trying to make a career of it. Um, what was the second question? What got me to start?
Yes, what made you really sit down and start?
Um, you know, you see some of those videos on YouTube, and there's one uh, teacher, UCLA teacher, Richard Walter, and he says he has students who come up to him and say, "Is this for me? Teach." And he says that if you have to ask that question, it's not for you, because it's not an industry where you are going to make a lot of money, probably. But it's something that it's something that's just for writers, it's just inside you. And just like when I saw these things happening in Macau, my whole mind was like, how can I put that into a dramatic, situation where I can write? So we look at the world in ways um, quite different, I think, to normal people, and in good ways, I think, because you know this is ultimately a story of two brothers, maybe backstabbing each other. There's other characters there who are doing nefarious things. But there's also a character in it who he's a Chinese character who's trying to escape a situation beyond his control. He's been arrested for something that he didn't do, and there's a political element here. So I think as and then there's even a scene where I touch upon the protests in Hong Kong in 2019. And it's me. I remember going there during that time, and um, it was walking in history where history's happening is a fascinating thing to do. So I wanted to add a moment in the book where he's actually in Hong Kong, and my experience of just coming out when the protests just kind of came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you knew you had to get out of there, or you'd be stuck there for hours and hours and hours. And it was weird because as a white person, you also didn't want to be stuck there because you knew there was propaganda from the other side that would say this is foreign influences. So it's kind of like, as much as I might have supported these protesters, I also knew that it was better for them to take care of, for them to be the face of it. So I think as writers, you end up in these situations and you see things happening, and you want to put your own spin on it. And as a writer, you can make it more personal. So we're able to, show it through the eyes of people that basically it's happening to. So yeah, so it's just something you're born with, and honestly, I was born with it, but I also was getting a lot of positive reinforcement from the people who read my stuff. So, as a human being, we always like to, you know, do things that create positive reinforcements from our friends and our lovers and our families. So if we can hopefully make a living out of it, then even better. So yeah.
Amazing. What is your schedule like when you are writing a book?
I'm running a software consulting company right now, and I should spend more time on the business, but I do find myself pulled away. I love to write in the morning, and then I will. I tend to write in the morning, do work as needed, and then I will do the editing later at night. So that's when I will curl up and print out the book or the screenplay or whatever. And but I don't suffer from writer's block anymore. So it's kind of nice. All I need to do is set up some time. And then actually I would like to go to the gym, and then I would basically do to read the script sometimes in the sauna. I found that was a good place too to get the mind, free. So yeah, so but I do find that I can be quite focused once I get going, and that has never been an issue for me, writer's block at least.
Amazing. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
What do I need in my writing space? I think just a good computer. Um, I do like to print out a lot. I probably print out too much because I do like the physical copy in hand. And I actually find I used to travel quite a lot for work. I don't travel so much anymore, but I don't have a problem. Sometimes riding in a cab in Manila might be a bit tricky because they tend to not be the nicest. It's not like a London cab, but I find myself in uh the edge of like a little bar in a casino, and I have no problem just focusing in on the work. And obviously that brings the whole wonderful travel aspect to your life. So a lot of that book also has scenes that were set in places that I went to, um, and then a little bit of dialogue that fits within the locale a bit more interestingly, let's say. So yeah, not too much actually. A computer, a pen, a nice book, and yeah, that's about it.
Love that. What is your favorite writing snack and drink?
My favorite writing style. You know what? Coffee is really my favorite drink. It's something that, and I will admit, I do like a civet coffee, which I know some people don't think that's very nice for the civets, but it is very smooth. Have you ever had civet coffee?
I
No,
have
it's like, do you know what it is?
no.
It's a very smooth coffee. It's basically what happens is the civet animal you'll eat. He eats a or she eats a the bean, the coffee bean, and then it digests in the stomach, and the stomach actually makes, for some reason, the acid of the stomach, and then he poops it out, and then they collect it, clean it, and then grind it, and it's actually some of the smoothest coffee in the world. So I do enjoy my coffee. I do like Kona coffee as well, which is from obviously Hawaii, and I don't mind a good red wine these days, but that's more like in the editing phase, I think. And then, as I said, I do like editing. Going into the sauna and doing some editing there was kind of interesting. And the steam room, obviously, your thing gets steamed up a little bit, but I find the mind was could be very creative there. So anyway,
Love that. What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
so I have BookBub, which is very interesting because they send me these things every day for cheap books, and I find there's some fantastic books in there. I do like there's a very interesting one about set kind of in the film industry in the 1950s and 60s, I think it is, and some characters based in Italy during Mussolini's time. I've actually been spending a lot of time um, to researching World War II kind of stuff. I guess as men get older, they find an attraction towards World War II stuff. Um, but I do like the authors that I ended up optioning was an author, as I said, Lawrence Shames was one, Maria Fluke was another, and a third one who's quite a well-known writer is Steve Lopez. He works for the LA Times now, and he does like a weekly column for the LA. He wrote the book that was the basis of the movie The Soloist, I believe it was. But these characters are, very much like the book that I optioned was a bunch of politicians stealing an election. It was called The Sunday Macaroni Club, and um, I do love I do love clever dialogue. So Oscar Wilde is probably my favorite writer of all time, just because of the way you know the the musicality and the cleverness of his dialogue is just quite amazing. And then George Bernard Shaw, obviously, in that time as well. In terms of the stuff that the other side of it too is like I do run an AI company, so I do have to read a lot of technical stuff, and I have written a few technical books. but right now it's interesting because the technology does fit within, my fiction work too. So I read a lot of research papers that doesn't sound that fascinating. Um, but um, yeah, it's and as oh, another book I optioned too, which was a World War II love story. It's called The Jukebox Queen of Malta, which was compared a little bit to Catch 22. So, stuff like satire, I really love. Writers who can make us look at the world in a unique and kind of, um, a way that can be uncomfortable at times, but to understand that, what, sometimes power is out of our control, but we do need to still keep it, keep an eye on these people supposedly leading us. So yeah, so that's kind of all over the place, but I think creatives are kind of that way. You never know what's going to interest you.
Amazing. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
So Oscar Wilde, as I say, would have been one of them. Um, the growing up in England well, not really growing up, but ending up in boarding school from 11 through 15 was quite interesting, because it we did get um, a very good education on, William Shakespeare. Let's say I remember reading Chaucer. Still to this day, I don't enjoy it. But I it's hard. I would say, people like in the film industry as well. People like Aaron Sorkin. I love what he does. Also, once again with dialogue and story. Um, so in terms of should yeah, I kind of blanked there. But yeah, so George, I went through that young 20-year-old phase where I was reading a lot of plays as well. So very much on the English side of things. Um, but yeah, drawing a bit of a blank.
No worries. What books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
I do remember reading Dune, um, and I do remember that being quite, and then I kind of grew up in the age of Star Wars as well. So I was that was one of my big things. Um, to so I did so Dune. I think Tolkien. I think for me as well when I grew up as well, but those less so today. I do like. In 1984 was quite influential too. So I was big into, George Orwell to this day. Is quite fascinating, and very much of what he said is coming true. So that's, quite scary. Huxley as well, and I do like Elmore Leonard's work once again. I hate to repeat that. Um, and Dave Barry, one or two of his books was quite interesting. Um, and then also Christopher Moore. I don't know if you know of him, but he's quite a funny author as well. So those would be the ones. I don't have my book is actually in the bookstore here. We have a Portuguese bookstore, and my book is in that store. But we don't have a lot of English, English books stores here. There's a few in Hong Kong, but I only get to Hong Kong every couple of weeks. So that's one of the things I really miss about, America is not being able to go to my local borders, and because I would go into those places and then just, find books. And then I loved the LA library. There was a library thing right around the corner from where I lived, and it was fantastic. I found one of the books that I optioned. Actually, I found there, and one of the best things that happened to me as an author, I found out my book was actually in the San Francisco library like 6 months ago. It was selected to be there, and I have a great picture of me of my book in the middle because I had a friend who lives in San Francisco. To the left of me is James Patterson, the number one best-selling author in the world, apparently. And then another person on my right was another New York Times bestseller. So I'm kind of there, squashed between two of the, selling a lot more books than I am. So yeah. So
Love that. That's so amazing. On the other side of that, as an adult, do you have any favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you automatically grab it?
Um, most of the ones I would grab are dead. But once again, Elmer Leonard, and anything that he wrote, I would like to read. Lawrence Shames, I was reading quite a few of his series too. Um, and I know he's had a few that once again are all set in Florida. Um, there's another writer who wrote a book. Actually, my book was compared to a book by uh, and he was based in Hong Kong, but he wrote a book that's set in Macau, and they're actually making a movie of it later, I think in August. It's called A Small Time Player, I think, something like that. It's all set in the gaming industry. What's his name? Lawrence. Uh, it'll come to me later. He did a movie recently as well with the guy who was Schindler's in Schindler's List, the English actor who played the commandant. And anyway, sorry, my memory. I'll come up with it later. I can provide you some of the details later. But yeah. So it's more, and to be honest with you, um, it is one of my regrets because when you're trying to run a company and you're writing as well, the one thing that you don't have a lot of time for is the reading. Um, so I don't read enough, and it's interesting because the industry has changed so radically in the past decade, just where all these new subgenres are coming out. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that's being produced, but finding the time is the toughest part. So
Love that. What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
I would say, you know, uh, the the amount of work that is out is quite amazing, and as writers, it's almost unfair, the ability to publish something now is, it's so easy, so simple. But there's kind of a flood right now in the market. So I would say what I would do when I was working in, and what they do in the film industry is pretty much read the first page. And if the first page doesn't grab you, then it's pretty much 99%, or if the first 10 pages don't grab you, it's pretty much 99% in certainty that you're not going to like the rest of them. So basically, they give you, in some cases, one page, in some cases, 10 pages. So the ability now, especially with Amazon, I go in and I'll grab that first chapter or first couple of chapters and read that and see if I like it. So and also, once again, that book club thing is wonderful because every day you get an email that says, and sometimes they're free books, so you have the ability to, and a lot of these free books they're free because they're part of a series. So, if you like the first one, that's what they're trying to entice you to buy the rest of them, which is fine. I mean, and, and honestly, you know, there are so many genres and subgenres today. I don't do the book talk, I believe is what they call it. I probably should. I just haven't had time to get into that. But you can learn about so many books in so many different avenues now. All throughout social media. So just don't be afraid to taste something. Try a genre that you've never looked at before because you'd be surprised. There's probably some good stuff in romance as well. So yeah. So and I don't eat crazy stuff here like chicken feet, but I will test some things. I went to a restaurant one time and we ordered the shrimp and they brought out, it was inside China in Shenzhen, and they literally brought out live shrimp and put it in a bowl and heated it up and killed it right in front of you. It was odd. I wouldn't do it again, but it's just like try something new. You never know. It might be something that you'll find intriguing enough to want to read the full thing. So yeah, that would be my advice in life in general too, not just for books.
Love that. On the opposite side of that, what would you tell someone starting to write their own book?
So when I was trying to break into the film business. It's that is a very exclusive community. It's very hard to break in. Um, but what I did was found books that I found very interesting, and then because of the adaptation process, you are forced to look at that story, to break down the elements of the story. You've got the beauty is you've got the characters there, and someone has taken the time to create a full-blooded, um, character that obviously worked on the page. And the amount of work that it got in before I got there, I did recognize, and I think if the beauty of being a writer today is not just the distribution channels, it's also the communities that you can join. There's so much free content right now. I think the first one that I started was like, I think it may have been on Coursera. It was a course that was free. It was someone who teaches courses at Michigan University, I think. And you ended up there was a little community there too. So you would submit work and people would read it. The teacher didn't really have anything to do with it, but people in that community would read it. And then, I the response that I was getting was very positive. And then someone said, "Oh, you shouldn't be here. You should be in some other." It was called uh, critique circle. They were like, try that because that's a whole community of hundreds of people that are all trying to read or all trying to write. So you end up writing your book or writing your chapters. You submit the chapter, and you actually then have to get credits to submit your book. You have to read other people's work. So you're reading other people's chapters, which you then critique on, and it's actually a great exercise because for your own writing, because you're actually looking at other people's writing and seeing what works and what doesn't. So it's a really nice community that you can then be a part of, and over the course of you get enough, you get depending on how much reading of other people's work, you get credits. I ended up doing it was like one chapter a week, pretty much, and so I had several people who were following the whole book. So you were getting comments, which obviously was good because they were entertained enough to stick around. And there is an element where you really are putting yourself out there, but kind of if you want to have a good life, I think it's what you need to do. You need to take the risk and not be afraid. And I now, I'm a public speaker, so I do speak at events, and I used to be very, very I was really kind of scared of that. But it was just like I came out here and it was something that the company needed me to do. So I learned to, you know, to kill the fear, I guess. So it's just like just understand that, we're all kind of here. There is talent that some people will just boom take off, but there are, you can learn the craft, and you know, I think it was a Baudelaire who was a really difficult writer to read, but he became hugely successful. And I think it was Baudelaire or maybe another one. No, it wasn't Voltaire. Anyway, so sometimes it's not so much making the words sound beautiful. It's more the story that underlies it all. So yeah, just jump on in. Feet first, and understand. You might find someone who doesn't like your work and doesn't like you for whatever reason, but you're gonna find criticism everywhere. But just see what the average is. See and see what works. Because the beauty I think of the creative community is actually very supportive of people and what they're trying to do because they kind of are that's their world. So and then once you have something written, there's tons of places to connect with agents. It's not like the film industry. It's the manuscript wish list is .com. Where you can go. There's hundreds of agents there saying we are looking for this type of book. Pitch us your book. And if you can't get an agent, find a publisher. I'll send you a link to a website where that's where I found my publisher. And you can just pitch to them, and if they like it, they'll they'll read your first 50 pages. If they like that, they'll read the rest of the 250, and then you know it can all of a sudden a year later your book is available on Amazon.com or at the San Francisco Library. So
Love that. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
Generally surprised to find out about me. Um, I think the I think the tech aspect. Like a lot of my friends, I before I moved out here were more um, on the creative side. I know a lot of people who work in the film industry. And I got here and I was able to, I wrote a couple books about AI. Think 5 years ago, so I kind of jumped on board of the whole AI thing right before it blew up. But I write articles for journals, peer reviewed journals now. So it's like I was able to seg into the tech thing quite uh, quite easily. Which when I go back and I see some friends and they're like, they're kind of like, what is this tech stuff all about? So, but it's round making myself a rounded individual, and realizing that there's not so much money in uh, the literary world. So we all need to make a living. So why not choose something that's interesting? So yeah, that would be, I guess, the biggest thing.
Love that. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
Um, I was going to add that stuff about the writing, but yeah, I would say, um, if you are interested in being a writer these days, the avenues out there are fantastic. It's like I write on Medium. I've got 1,700 people who follow me, and you can actually make a little bit of money on that too. It's not a lot. You need to get boosted, but still, these are all ways where you can increase your ability to be noticed. I don't know how I got noticed by this one journal company that I write for now, and they come to me every year now, pretty much are like, "Oh, can you write something on this topic?" And now I'm getting cited, by other papers, so it's interesting to see your name out there, Pearson 2019. So you kind of never know where a road is going to lead, and I did grow up in Singapore and Bahrain in the Middle East. So I wasn't too fearful of traveling to a new country. And I would say, don't be afraid to try new experiences. Don't be afraid to jump on if you get an offer to go somewhere else and leave your family. Yes, we all love being close to family, but it can be a great opportunity for you. So, and I'm now writing something that is is in the genre. I don't know even know what chick lit for a guy, I guess. About a main character who's one of the leaders of the Manosphere who gets involved with a feminist. And it's based more on a screenplay that I wrote 10 years ago. So it's like you know, don't be afraid to jump into a genre that not you haven't done much in. You never know. You could be taking a spin. You could be providing a unique spin on it that the normal writers in that genre would do. So because of what I bring to it. So yeah, just I think there's a wonderful Sun Tzu quote. It says, "Within chaos there is opportunity." So look at what you're going through. Understand it has a lot to do with you probably, but you can create great opportunities out of the worst experiences. So yeah, uh, I would say that would be my and read a lot. The reality is there's a lot of secrets about the world that are revealed in books. And yeah. So
Love that. Where's the best place for readers to find your books? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option and the best place to connect with you?
so uh, the book is on Amazon. The book is also on Barnes and Noble. It's on Goodreads as well, so you can see that. Um, the it, it's if they want to come to Macau, it's at our local store. I'm trying to get it into more. We're trying to get it into more libraries as well. As I said, it is available at 3 different libraries in San Francisco. It is available at the Pierce County up in Washington, I believe, as well. So if you have any listeners there, and that one is available digitally as well. So we did do a library blast a couple months ago, and we did get interest from about 31 different libraries throughout the country. So I'm hoping it does pop up in those. Amazon.com, obviously. And I'm available on Instagram, Andrew W. Pearson. I'm available on LinkedIn as well, Facebook, um, the other pretty much. My website also is andrewwpearson.com. So that kind of has all my writing, all of my articles. And then I'm also available on Medium, which is Andrew W. Pearson on Medium as well. So, and my company is intelligentsia.co. So you can always find me there as well. And as I said, this is the idea is to turn it into a trilogy or maybe more. The reviews were really positive. I think I have a 4.8 up on Amazon right now. And some of the reviews were really, really nice. There was one, it's kind of interesting because there's three main characters. One is Cash, who's the Chinese, Cash Chiang is his name. And he's actually an amalgamation of someone he's an amalgamation of someone I met in I was hired to write a screenplay by an Italian actor many years ago, and it was really funny because he flew me to Milan, picked me up at the airport, and then drove. Sorry, I'm getting a bit of a feedback, and then drove me up to Rimini. And what was interesting about him was he was from the same area that Mussolini was from, and he looked exactly like Mussolini, like a bald head, short guy, but he loved American country music. And so we were driving along, Lake Como, listening to Johnny Cash. And he was actually very well known in Italy because he was on a similar show as we have in America with SNL, Saturday Night Live. So you can imagine how. So you'd see people just like staring at him. But he was the funniest character. And I took that persona and put it on a Chinese, basically junket casino operator. And so a lot of people have loved that character. And then there's a second character who's the detective, and he's a Portuguese Macau. So I had a triumvirate of Portuguese Macau, the Chinese, and then myself, the American / English expat. So sorry, I lost track of your question. But anyway, so that gives you more ideas on characters. But what was your question again? Sorry.
Nope, you covered it. Where to connect with you. I
Okay.
think one thing was signed copies, if you offer those or not.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah. I guess hit me up on my uh, my website, and I'll gladly do that. And then one last thing, I actually did adapt it into a screenplay, so I am exploring that. We do have some interest, but the film business is the least trustworthy of all, of believing anything anyone says. So hopefully it'll be in the theaters one day, but you know. So
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful that we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those links in the show notes. That way everyone can find you. And again, thank you so much.
no. Thank you very much. It's wonderful that you're doing this, and because we need voices, and it was a pleasure, absolutely a pure pleasure. So thank you.